moving from blah-full to blissful in 2021. Okay, so how are you guys doing with your New Year's resolutions? Or have you not started the work of making positive changes a reality in your life? The very fact and the hope of a new year is that we have the opportunity to release what no longer brings us joy and make changes in our thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs so that we can be open to joy in this new year. So that we may move from blissful experiences to blissful experiences in our new year. But instead of feeling excited and raring to go with our resolutions for positive change in our lives, maybe like me, you didn't even write any New Year's resolutions. With everything turned upside down by the pandemic, with the restrictions on the pleasurable activities that we might want to engage in, and the uncertainty about our future, not only our personal future, but future of our loved ones and co-Americans here. We may feel stuck, tired, frustrated, or bored with our life, and negative about ourselves and others, with pet peeves stirring up within us, leaving us feeling judgmental, critical, and sensitive. This morning we're going to explore how we can make a move from blissful to blissful in this new year. I'll begin by sharing some thoughts about the blah experience that so many of us may be dealing with these days. Basically, the blahs are where we feel flat. It's a couple of steps below neutral, and this feeling usually comes and goes. It may last for a few hours, days, maybe even weeks. The blahs can be an overall general malaise or a feeling about a specific activity that we participate in, that we used to enjoy. But now, the thrill is gone. We don't feel joy in doing that anymore. The technical name for this feeling is anhedonia, which means lacking pleasure. In her book entitled Falling into Ease, release your struggle and create the life you love. Released before the pandemic in 2016, Unity Minister Eliza Bloom Robinson describes her own blissful experience. She wrote that she had a good life. She had reached most of her career goals. She lived in a fun city and had a wonderful relationship, made decent money, and had great friends, and everything was going just fine. She continues, but one day, she wrote, I woke up with something like a dust cloud over my vision. I felt like a blah had settled over me. At first, it wasn't anything much, but it began to build. What is this? Where did this come from? She was asking herself. Over a period of a couple of months, she says, she went from being on top of the world to hanging out in the ditches. Robinson wrote that everything seemed to fall apart. Her work shifted. Her relationship became distant, and she was feeling so much discontent. Through some reflection, review, and self-questioning, Eliza realized that even though her life was fine, it was not deeply fulfilling. A dark cloud of discontent hung over her. Well, Eliza can be said to have the blahs, or some call it the blues. Life seems gray, clouded over. There's no zing. I think of the little character Pigpen in the Charlie Brown series, who is always dirty because he walks around with his own perpetual dust cloud hanging over his head wherever he goes. You know, this may be where many of us are right now, feeling like this dust cloud is overhead and it's always following us, it's always with us. at this start of the brand new year. Even though we know we would like to make positive changes in our life, we're thwarted by a lack of motivation and interest in pursuing these changes. Sometimes with a "what's the use" attitude of mind. And generally there is a feeling of tiredness, which is a tiredness of the body, of the mind, and of the heart. Some would call that discouragement. "Our get up and go has got up and gone," states a funny old poem. But really, where can our get up and go safely during this time of the pandemic? Our days can feel gray and blawful due to the many changes and challenges that we face daily, the losses that we are experiencing, and the sacrifices that we have to make in order to stay well, to stay healthy, to maintain our livelihood, and to assist others during this pandemic. Our days can become gray and blawful when we experience fear and insecurity because of what is happening in the governance of our country. Too much negative news is a downer for sure. And yet, we feel the need to stay awake these days and be aware. In his article in Psychology Today, licensed social worker Robert Taibbi gives several causes for having a blawful experience. Number one, lack of sleep and exercise, which creates a vicious cycle. We don't get enough sleep, and then we're too tired to exercise, and our overall ability to handle stress goes down. Problems start to overwhelm us, so we put them off, and we get more anxious about them, creating more stress, making it hard to sleep. It just keeps revolving over and over, the chicken and the egg. Number two, burnout, working long hours, exhaustion from caring for kids, the elderly, for those who are sick, dealing with the loss of financial security, dealing with back-to-back crises. All of these can leave us feeling trapped and tapped out emotionally and physically. Feeling disoriented. We can settle into the blahs when we experience a situation where we feel helpless. We are out of our routine, removed from our comfort zone, and we don't feel that we can do anything about it. Number four, letdowns, grief, and loss of all kinds can leave us feeling blawful. We can feel blawful because of the loss of loved ones, certain freedoms and activities that we enjoy or we used to enjoy doing, the loss of dreams, careers, loss of expectations because of the uncertainty of our future and the future of our country. And then number five, there's loneliness, the inability to physically connect and to be present with loved ones and friends whom we want to support and those who support us. Keeps the focus on gray days. Feeling helpless to change this due to the pandemic. It is so easy to begin to feel like a victim of the blahs. It's easy to disasterize and to feel, why bother? To say to yourself, you need somehow to feel better before you can do something different. But the truth is that we need to act in spite of how we feel in order to feel differently. Now let's explore blissful. Bliss is defined as our sense of joy, fulfillment, and purpose. We can also say that our bliss is a natural direction that we can take to maximize our sense of joy, fulfillment, and purpose. So bliss is the joy that we feel, and it's also the path or the things that we do to bring about this feeling of joy. Blissful is the state that we're in when we're doing what brings us a deep sense of joy, satisfaction, meaning, and purpose. When we are in a blissful state, we're listening to our heart. Joseph Campbell, one of the pioneers in the discussion about bliss, suggested that people find their bliss. And people were saying that many years ago. I gotta find my bliss. He shared that one way to find out what makes us feel happiest is to be mindful of our happiest moments, to reflect on our lives. Not just get excited, but deeply happy. You know, I had to work, or I have to choose now to do joy, because, honestly, it's been a long time since I felt this bliss. To find our bliss means that we must take time out from what many of us do, which is focusing on what is most unpleasant and engaging in the art of complaining. If we experience one or more of the following items, we most likely will be in a state of bliss. Mentally check the ones that you experience or feel. Here they are. If we are in a state of bliss, we have numerous experiences of synchronicity. Things happen and things come together in marvelous ways. We feel as if we are contributing to the collective good. 3, we feel energetic. We feel completely alive. We feel playful and joyful. We feel a sense of direction in our life. When we are in a state of bliss, we have a deep sense of meaning. We feel a deep sense of gratitude and thankfulness, even for the smallest blessings or gifts we experience. We feel a deep connection with our spiritual source, God, and with all others. We feel a deep sense of oneness with all of life. We feel that we can trust the goodness that can be found in life. We can trust that we are loved, provided for, guided, directed, and healed by God. And this love is unconditional. We are experiencing our bliss when we can behold the Christ in ourselves and in others, and we know that God, as good, is active. And this will of good is working for the highest good of all. We can feel blissful when we know that there is only one presence and power in our lives and in the universe, and that this presence is with us always and is good always. We don't have to fight against another power that seems to want to harm us or hurt us here in unity. We don't have to battle with some other force. There is only one presence and power in our lives and in the universe, God, the good. When we want to move from blah-full to blissful, we can use a process called editing. In a wonderful article called Editing Your Life on a website called Daily Om, information is shared encouraging us to edit our life, just like we might make edits to a movie script. Here's how it is stated in the article. Our lives can be compared to an ongoing movie script over which we have control. Within us lies the power to examine what works or isn't working in our lives and make edits to our life script accordingly. Choosing to actively edit our life can be quite empowering. As we grow spiritually, we learn that we have the choice to accept the script that we have written so far, or we can edit it at any time so that we can create a life that fulfills us. We can cut out from our life script what no longer is working for us. Now, if we have carried emotional baggage or held on to an unhealthy relationship for a long time, these may be difficult to just edit out. But when we accomplish this, we feel a new sense of freedom and empowerment in our own lives. Remember, though, we don't have to do this editing work alone. The Christ presence in us is the overcomer. It is the victor principle in us. Basically, editing is what we engaged in last Sunday in our New Year's Burning Bowl process, releasing and spiritually giving over to God through a process of meditation and writing down what we seek to release on pieces of paper and then alighting them and watching them disintegrate into ashes, into nothingness. In that process, we were symbolically activating that releasing power that's within us. Releasing our fears, our sense of hurt, our resentments, our painful memories, our shame and guilt from past experiences, editing out activities that we find stressful, releasing ourselves from people who drain our energy, letting go of our emotional baggage. These are all cuts that we can choose to make to our life script. To begin editing your life, take some time to get quiet within and think about negative experiences that you've had that no longer serve to bring you joy or bliss, and make the commitment to let them go, to remove them, to change them. The outer process of writing down on pieces of paper, as I mentioned, activates the inner process to undergo letting and releasing these things. The purification property of fire is symbolic in helping us release these things that we need to let go of and want to let go of. Now, to move into the blissful state, in the spaces left behind after we have done our releasing and letting go, we can add whatever we like. We can add into our script the kinds of positive experiences, the people, the beliefs, the attitudes that we would like to fill our life with. Those that move us to the experience of bliss. In Unity, the white stone process that we underwent last Sunday can be used to bring into consciousness the blessings that we desire to add to our script of life. In this process, we sit quietly in reflection and meditation, and we ask God's presence in us, the Christ within, to bring to our mind experiences which we know have brought us joy in the past. We symbolize these by viewing in our mind a word, a new name, an attitude, which we use to represent that joyous experience of the past, which we want to incorporate into our life script right now. And if you missed last Sunday's service, check it out. And last, there is a technique that Jesus models for us, which we can use for not only releasing what we need to let go of, but also to prepare ourselves to receive our new good this new year. This 5-step process entails releasing the negatives and taking hold of the good. This is in Matthew 14, verse 22 through 32. And this is one of my favorite stories. It's Jesus and the disciple Peter who walk on water. And just previous to this passage, Jesus had been out all day healing the sick. He had just performed the miracle of feeding 5,000 people from 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, which they gathered from the crowd of people there. Matthew 14, 22 to 32. And then he made his disciples, this is about Jesus, get into the boat and go before him to the other side. And he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. And when the evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was many furlongs distant from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus came to them, his disciples, walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It's a ghost, it's a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I. Have no fear." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it's you, bid me to come to you on the water." And Jesus said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he took his eyes off Jesus. He was afraid and began to sink, and he cried out, "Lord, save me." And Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "O man of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Let's take a closer look at these steps. 1, Jesus makes his disciples get in a boat and go to the other side. When dealing with difficult situations, we can get stuck. We can focus so much on the problem that it's all we see. We have like tunnel vision. When our vision gets clouded over by negative emotions, we lose sight of a higher perspective on a situation, one that we're dealing with. And we have to do what Jesus did and make our spiritual faculties, our disciples, get in the boat and go to the other side of that situation that we're dealing with. Love, faith, understanding, inner strength, the imagination, all of these are some of the 12 spiritual gifts that we all have been born with. For example, the imagination is another one of the 12. When our imagination has been busy conjuring up all kinds of negative outcomes for the situations that we face, we must flip it to the other side of the situation and use our imagination instead to design positive, successful, love-filled scenarios. We use our imagination to create a picture of the perfect spiritual outcome of a trying situation. We imagine antagonistic parties shaking hands. In our mind, we see forgiveness being offered and accepted. See all of those involved offering good wishes. Remember the Geraldine Jones theory. You remember Flip Wilson, the black comedian, years ago? He had a character named Geraldine Jones, and her favorite saying was, "What you see is what you get." Well, you know, this is true. What we see spiritually, using our imagination, we experience. And we can spiritually use our imagination to get to the other side of a problem, to see the good that we seek in that situation. Number 2, Jesus dismissed the crowd. We face challenges on the journey to God realization, and there are times when we become so overwhelmed that negative thoughts and feelings crowd us in. We feel smothered and we can't breathe spiritually. When the storm is raging in our heart and our mind threatens to drown us in all of these negative thoughts, we can dismiss the crowd like Jesus did. This is not a running away from our problems or feelings. It's gaining some distance and some perspective from them. We can do this by replacing fear thoughts with God thoughts. Emmett Fox wrote something called the Golden Key. It's a beautiful process where we learn to replace negative thoughts with positive ones. Whenever we think or begin to think fear, we think of God and the things of divine love instead. Again, this doesn't mean we get out of having to actually take outer steps to make a situation right. We take a spiritual break until our strength is up to the task of making needed changes. 3, Jesus went up upon a nearby mountain to pray. He was a man of prayer. Time and again, we read in the Bible that just before and sometimes even after performing a miracle, Jesus went to a mountainside alone to pray. He prayed positive prayers of thanksgiving for the good even before he received the blessing he sought. We can take as an example the activity of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead in the book of John, and that's, let's see here, 11 chapter verses 38 through 44. And particularly it says, Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you that you have listened to me or heard me, and I know that you always listen to me or hear me. But I say this prayer for the sake of the crowd standing around here, that they may believe that you sent me." So Jesus' prayer was an affirmative one, thanking God before the experience, the blessing, even took shape and form. That's how we pray in unity. Take time to be present with the presence in you. You don't need a bunch of words in this step. You just need to be still and know. Jesus was empowered by his time alone with God, and so shall we be. 4, Jesus came down off that mountain and he walked on the stormy waters. He didn't walk away from the trouble. He didn't stay up there on the mountain praying forever. He always came back down. He re-entered his life. And in this case, Jesus comes down from praying and he goes out to walk on the stormy waters. which are threatening the lives of his disciples who are in the boat. If you have been inspired with new strength, renewed faith, and inner resolve, it's time to get to work. Work it, baby, work it. Challenge yourself to put feet on your prayers. In this way, you move from blissful to blissful. Get up and get going and use those divine ideas that you receive during your prayer time. Just remember a couple of those James Brown songs. Maybe even sing a few lines to get your feet moving. Yow! I feel good. Do 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 do. I knew that I would now. Or get up, get on the move. Get up, get in the groove. Do it, y'all. And last, Peter walked on the water as well. Peter represents our inner faculty of faith here in unity. And what this says to me is that always, okay, when we keep our eyes open to the presence and activity of God in us, we too can walk on these storms in our lives. These blissful experiences can be changed to blissful ones. Having heard the call of the inner Christ to come up higher, we are challenged to do what Peter did, to go beyond our self-limiting beliefs, cast aside these doubts, and go for it. When Jesus said to Peter, come, something in Peter said, I can do this, and I'm going to do this. And he did. The only problem was when Peter looked away from faith to fear. Then he began to sink under the wind-tossed waters. So this tells us to keep looking where we're going. Keep our eyes on the prize of the high calling of the Christ, the Apostle Paul said, and we will have the ability to walk on the waters of every storm in our life, moving easily from blissful experiences to blissful ones. God bless you. And let's take a few moments to reflect on the message today. And as I speak these words in first person, I invite you to speak them to yourself, accept them for yourself, if they're comfortable for you. Take several deep breaths. You might even close your eyes and let this be a signal to yourself that you're moving the focus of your attention away from sights and sounds around you and entering that inner chamber, as Jesus called it, that secret place of the Most High in us. Breathe that awareness in. Jesus said, the kingdom of God is in the midst of you. It's in the midst of us. And we can retire at any time we want to that place of quiet, to the kingdom where God dwells in us. And we can open our mind and heart to divine guidance. In this way, we can know what it is we need and want to release, and what we desire to be open to receive. I let go of what no longer serves my joy in this new year. There are responsibilities that I have, and I can fulfill those with a joy-filled heart instead of a blissful heart. I can remember that the light and love of God expresses through me in everything that I allow it to express in and through. Caring for someone, working with others, sending light and love to others in the world. All of these are ways that we serve this light and love of God. And take a moment to see yourself, envision yourself. Use the gift in your imagination to see the light that you are. And Jesus said, you are the light of the world. We can choose to be that. And how our world and our country need us to be that right now. I am the light of the world. I let this light of God in me radiate through me, and it uplifts those around me and helps to uplift our country and our world. Hold this thought in silence for a moment.